Hey guys, my name is JC and welcome to another gameplay video featuring Hinata Dawn-Crowned. This is a control list that looks to break apart interaction spells just long enough to hold our opponents at bay so we can either beat them down or burn them out. If you're looking for some ideas on how to build your own Hinata list, make sure to swing by the channel where you'll find a deck tech discussing all the cards played today and more. But with that, let's get to the game. Okay, so we won the die roll. It's absolutely great to see. We'll definitely take that. Okay, and looking at our opening hand, it's not too great. We don't really want to see Underworld Breach this early. We've only got 2 lands, so we'll take a mulligan on this. Second hand is better. We've got 3 lands. We've got Fierce Guardianship to protect our commander when it comes down, and Bifrost and Volcanic Offering as interaction for our opponents. This is looking pretty good. We'll hold on to that. Okay, so we draw a land for turn. That's great to see. That means we've got enough mana now to get our commander out when we get to the right turn. We'll just play our Steam Vents here, put it in tapped, and we'll pass it over. Scarab God just plays a Field of the Dead, and leaves the turn there. Kambal plays a land, into a Healer's Hawk. Nebush plays a Swamp. I'm just saying Nebush because I don't have to say that full name every single time, and that's it for them. We draw into another land, so I think we'll just get down our Shivan Reef here, and we've got nothing else to do. The Scarab God plays a land, and they leave it there. Kambal plays a land, into a High Priest of Penance. Whenever it's dealt damage, you may destroy target non-land permanent. And in response to that, Nebush casts a Vampiric Tutor. Then Kambal swings their Healer's Hawk into the Nebush player, and they pass it there. A land comes down for Nebush, into a Glasses of Urza. They can tap it to look at target player's hand. And they've targeted us on that one, so they want to see what we've got going on. So at least they know we have some protection in our hand and quite a bit of interaction. It might change the way they play against us now. And that's it for them. We draw an Aurelia's Fury. Not too useful just yet. So we don't have any real targets for Bifrost yet. Nothing worth casting. I think we just go here, get our land down, keep up Fierce Guardianship in case anything really terrible comes down between now and our next turn. But otherwise that's going to be it for us. Scarab God starts with a land. And once again, they're passing the turn, so it could be likely they have some sort of interaction in their hand. That's something for us to keep in mind as we move to our next turn. Kambal plays a land, and they tap out for a Bontu's Monument. Black creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast a creature spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. We will let that through. That's definitely not worth a Fierce Guardianship. They move to attacks, and this time the Healer's Hawks come in our way. We will take it. And that's the end of their turn. Nebush casts the Commander Sphere, and this time they look at the Scarab God player's hand using the Glasses of Urza. So they're going to know if they have any interaction in hand. I wish we knew that information, and they leave it there. Okay, so we draw an Apostle's Blessing for turn, which is great. We have some protection there. Now, I'm pretty concerned that the Scarab God is probably holding up some form of counter magic to make sure that our commander doesn't come down. So I think just for this turn, I'm going to play a Plains, and I'm just going to try to get down our Maniform Hellkite. In response to that, the Scarab God casts the Vampiric Tutor. We'll let that go through, because we can't stop it even if we'd like to. And it looks like our Maniform Hellkite goes through, so with that, we just leave the turn there. Scarab God plays a Rhystic Study, so that may have been what they Vamp Tutored for. That would be a worthy target of Fierce Guardianship if we had our commander down, but unfortunately we can't do anything about that. And they just play a land. And it looks like they're happy to leave the turn there. Kambal casts a Cryptghast, which triggers Rhystic Study. They cannot pay for it, so Scarab God is going to draw a card. Bontu's Monument triggers, so we'll lose a life and they'll gain a life. And it resolves. This time Healer's Hawk swings in at the Scarab God player. That damage goes through, and Kambal leaves it there. Nebush plays a land, and I'll probably realise I'm really saying the name wrong here, so go easy on me. And we see their commander come down. Nebuchadnezzar. So X tap, choose a card name, target opponent reveals X cards at random from their hand, then that player discards all cards with that name revealed this way. Activate only during your turn. That triggers Rhystic Study. They cannot pay for it, so Scarab God draws once again. And now they tap the Glasses of Urza to look at the final player's hand, Kambal. So they're going to have a real good idea about what we can all do at the moment. Probably less so Scarab God now that they've drawn a few extra cards. And that's the turn for them. So for us, we draw another land. At the moment, I think our only option here is to really get our commander down and start getting a bit of a board presence happening. I don't know how likely that's going to trigger the Kambal player to want to swing their High Priest of Penance in to be able to destroy it, but we have to risk it. We can't sit around resting on our laurels. So we'll start, we'll get our mana correct, and let's get down Hinata. Unfortunately, we can't pay for Rhystic Study, and Hinata resolves, thankfully. Now, I think what we'll do here is we'll play the red side of this land, the Lava Glide Pathway. Now, the question is, I think we might be able to get a bit of help here from our Nebush player. If I'm going to butcher their name, I can at least help them a little bit and they can help us. So we're actually going to try to give them the Volcanic Offering, and hopefully they'll target, I'll at least target the Field of the Dead to take that out, and then we'll see if they want to take out the Cryptghast, and that'll at least take a few things out at the moment. There's not as many targets as I'd like for it, but I think at the moment we've got to try to slow, especially the Scarab God player with a Rhystic Study out that's already drawn them as many cards as it has. Okay, so it looks like for some reason, unless I'm doing something wrong here, it's not actually giving me the option to declare targets and cast it first. So maybe Magic Online hasn't actually resolved the very unique issue here where when Hinata casts this, normally you actually declare targets first, and then that way it actually reduces the cost so we can cast it for 1 red mana if our opponent chooses different targets, but we're not even really getting the choice here. So again, unless I'm doing something wrong, maybe I am, but that's a little bit of a shame. It looks like we might have to just pass the turn and leave it there. Actually, no, we're going to swing in our Maniform Hellkite over at the Scarab God player. We've got to punish them a little bit for having that Rhystic Study, and then after that we'll pass the turn. So that's a little bit of a shame we didn't get to do the Volcanic Offering trick. It was one of the many cards in this deck that I've been looking forward to taking full advantage of with Hinata out. Scarab God plays a land, and they play Kindred Discovery. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. In the right deck, that is an insane card draw engine. I haven't seen it a lot. I don't always play against a lot of tribal decks, but by God, when it does go off, it really goes off. So the Scarab God is going to have no problem drawing cards, and that means they're going to be in a pretty scary place very quickly. I just hope that the other players recognize that as well. Maybe that High Priest of Penance will come over one of our ways so they can destroy it and get rid of at least one of them. So now Kambal gets down their commander. We'll see if they pay for Rhystic Study here, and they do. They also use the Extort ability from Cryptghast, so we all lose a life and they gain that much life. Bontus will trigger, we'll lose further life, they'll gain life, and their commander resolves. And as they move to combat, they send the Healer's Hawk in towards the Nebush player, and Cryptghast in towards the Scarab God player. So unfortunately we don't see the High Priest of Penance being put to use. It looks like the Kambal player may be holding onto it until they see a much bigger threat coming down, and they leave the turn there. They start by casting a Mind Stone. That triggers Kambal, so they'll lose 2 life. Kambal gains 2 life. Rhystic Study triggers, and they don't pay the 1. And finally, Mind Stone resolves. Then they immediately cast a Lightning Greaves, triggering Kambal and Rhystic Study again. Once again, they don't pay, and Lightning Greaves comes down. They move to equip it to their commander, and now they're tapping the Glasses of Urza to look at the Kambal player's hand, and they leave it there, leaving 2 mana up. So because they didn't pay for Rhystic Study, that might indicate that they want to have some sort of interaction held up at the moment. We draw a Curse of the Swine, which is a very, very good card in this deck. And there's certainly a few good targets on the board, but I'm not too sure if I want to trigger it just yet. So we'll start by playing our Forbidden Orchard for turn. Now we certainly could use Bifrost to take out quite a few of the artifacts of the Nebush player, including the Lightning Greaves, and we could take out the Bontu's Monument. I don't know if it's worth doing that just yet. You know what, because we don't have too much else going at the moment and we have a Fierce Guardianship held up, I'm going to try the Volcanic Offering and see if the discount perhaps happens when we try to cast it for 5 mana and we get it refunded. We'll at least try it out and we can get rid of that Field of the Dead before it becomes a problem, and maybe the Cryptghast or the Kambal. I'd be happy for either of those two to be taken out by the Nebush player. So we'll pay our 5 mana, and now let's see what our opponent ends up choosing. So they've chosen one of the lands of the Scarab God player, which is good. Let's see what other creature they choose here. They may also want to get rid of the High Priest of Penance if they think there's going to be a permanent they want to get down that's going to be quite a juicy target. Rhystic Study triggers, we will pay for it. We're going to try to be responsible here. And the 1/1 at the moment I think I will give to our Nebush player. They're currently our ally, or should I say the enemy of my enemy is my friend at the moment. Maniform Hellkite triggers. So we'll make a 5/5 Hasty Dragon Illusion token. And it looks like they did select the Kambal as well. So although we didn't get to see the discount, unfortunately, it does seem to be a little bit of a bug. Still a great card if we have to cast it on its own. So now we'll move to combat. And unfortunately, I don't want to feel like I'm picking on the Scarab God player, but they just are in a very threatening position with so much card draw online. Particularly in their colors, they could easily wipe the board and then set everyone back. So we'll try to put them down to a more respectable life total, where we're not as worried about them. Unfortunately, this is sometimes the power of playing very powerful cards early. It does make you a target. I've been there plenty of times myself. I've been on the receiving end of it. So they go down to 15. And yep, unfortunately, it looks like they probably felt like they were a little targeted there. They've scooped the game up, so that's a little unfortunate to see. But like I said, just when you play such powerful cards, this does happen. So I think with that, we'll leave the turn there and we lose our beautiful Hasty Dragon. Kambal taps out for a Knight of Obligation. It's a 2/4 with Vigilance and Extort. And that triggers Bontu's Monument. And now that they swing the Healer's Hawk in towards our way, we can't do anything about that. And they leave the turn there. Nabush sacrifices their Commander Sphere to draw a card, so I think because they know some of the cards in our hand, most likely the Bifrost that's going to set them back a little bit, they're probably trying to look for an answer here. Going to try to remove Hinata out of the way. And now they cast Liliana's Caress. Whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life. Now they tap the Glasses of Urza, looking at Kambal's hand. And now it looks like they're activating their commander. And they're actually targeting the Kambal player. I'm pretty surprised there. I thought that would have been us, especially knowing what we had in our hand. But we're happy for that. We're not going to complain. And so they discard an Unburial Rites. That's good to see, because that could have brought back their Cryptghast. They will also lose 2 life off Liliana's Caress. They just pass through combat, and it looks like the turn is being left there. So we draw into an Inscription of Insight, which is great to see, because we needed a little bit of card draw to start filling up our hand again. But I think this turn is going to be quite good for us. We can cast Bifrost for 1 red mana, take out a few of these artifacts that the Nabush player has, including the Bontu's Monument, so we don't keep losing life to the Kambal player. And then we also have the Curse of Swine at the ready to be able to get rid of a few of these creatures, which all I'm really concerned with at the moment is the High Priest of Penance and the Commander making us discard cards. So I think we'll start with that. We'll cast our Bifrost, targeting all of our opponent's artifacts. We'll pay our 1 red. That triggers our Maniform Hellkite. Now I think I will trigger off the Curse of the Swine. We'll target everything except for the Spirit token. That will once again trigger our Maniform Hellkite, making another Hasty Dragon. And so now we see many Boar tokens hit the battlefield. And I think with that, we'll just move to combat. We're going to send everything over at the Kambal player because their life total's getting pretty high. We want to start bringing it back down a little bit. So we'll go with our Commander and our 2 Hasty Dragons. Because if they're going to have a life gain strategy going on, we'll at least make Commander damage a reality for them. So it doesn't matter how high their life total goes. That all goes through fine. So I think we just pass the turn there. Hope we get back to our turn next turn and we'll have a few good things we can do. Cast Inscription of Insight, make a good body, and bounce any problematic creatures that hit the battlefield. Kambal starts with an Orzhov Signet, and they tap out for a Mentor of the Meek. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay 1 if you do draw a card. They pass through combat, and they leave the turn there. So far so good for us. We just have to get through another turn here, relatively unscathed, and we're going to be in a really good position. I think we can already see the power of Hinata and the removal package that it runs. It just breaks apart those interaction spells so well. So they start with playing a land, and they cast a Waste Not, very powerful card in a discard deck. It is a good card, but at the moment I don't think it's worth Fierce Guardianship in. I want to keep that up for our board state at the moment because we're still ahead. And now they cast a Cyclonic Rift targeting our Commander. So look, I'd really like to cast the Inscription of Insight next turn. I don't think it's worth holding on to that card, so we just recast our Commander and pass. So I am going to cast the Apostle's Blessing here. We will pay the 2 life and give our Commander protection. That triggers Maniform Hellkite. We'll give it protection from blue. And that fizzles the Cyclonic Rift. They just pass through combat. Our non-existent token gets exiled. And we get to our next turn with our board state still intact. Great to see. And a mana drain, so we're drawing into all our protection here, so I'm feeling pretty safe. But the plan here is definitely to get the Inscription of Insight off, and we're going to do it kicked. So we're going to choose all modes, return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hand, scry 2, draw 2, and create an XX Blue Illusion token, where X is the number of cards in the person's hand, which is mine. So what we'll do here is we'll bounce the Mentor of the Meek. We'll also bounce one of the boar tokens here on Kambal's side. The target player will be us to make the illusion. And so we'll go blue, blue, blue. We'll give the spirit to Nebush. Mana form triggers. We get a 5/5. So we have a Reflecting Pool and a Semester's End. So at the moment, I don't think we need to hit our land drops. We've got enough mana for what we're doing at the moment. Semester's End would be great if we had some sort of cards that were really affected by ETB effects. So I don't think we need that either. So we're going to put both to the bottom and hope we draw something a little bit better. And we get our own Rhystic Study and an Eerie Interlude. So we do have further protection in the form of being able to bounce our Manaform Hellkite and Hinata if it gets targeted or a board wipe happens. And Rhystic Study will be really nice to start filling our hand next turn. So that's some pretty good hits there. Let's move to combat. We'll send Hinata at Kambal once again. And then we'll send the Manaform and Dragon Illusion token over at the other player. The damage goes through. And we'll just pass the turn there, sit in back on our Eerie Interlude and Fierce Guardianship. So far so good, guys. The deck is doing what we want it to do. Let's see if we can carry it out all the way to the end of the game. So Kambal just recast their commander here. And they are moving to combat, sending the boar token over at Nebush, surprisingly. It looks like they just take the damage, and Kambal passes it there. And so now Nebush casts Sift. It's a sorcery, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. We're happy for that to go through. And they discard a creature card. And now they cast Burglar Rat. When it ETBs, each opponent discards a card. And that's actually quite a tough choice for us here and what we discard. A lot of the cards in our hand are actually pretty good. Now the question is, what do we discard? So in my mind, because the Nebush player's life total's getting pretty low, we can almost kill them soon using Aurelia's Fury and Manaform Hellkite out. So I think I want to hold on to that. Fierce Guardianship's free protection. And Rhystic Study's going to start filling our hand up again. So it's really between Eerie Interlude and Mana Drain. Look, I think it's going to be Eerie Interlude here. It is going to be good protection against a board wipe, but Mana Drain's just going to take care of anything that we run into. So we'll discard that. That will draw the Nebush player a card because of their Waste Knot. And it looks like they're also going to be making a 2/2 zombie from the other opponent. They must have discarded a creature card. Liliana's Caress triggers. So we'll lose 2 life. And now it looks like they're moving to combat, sending their boar and 2 spirits over at the Kambal player. So I don't know why we're getting so lucky here and not being targeted. It probably should be us that's being swung into. But they both must know something that I don't know. And they're actually going to block with their commander and a boar token. The boar's blocking the 1/1 spirit. Kambal's blocking the boar token. So 1 damage will get through. And they end the turn there. Now we draw a Deflecting Swat. We are seeing all the interaction, all the protection this game. And we're very happy to see it, to be honest with you. I'm feeling very, very safe. If we weren't feeling safe before, we certainly are now. So what's the play here? I'm certainly feeling a little bit more afraid of the Nebush player than I am the Kambal player at the moment. They have less cards in hand. They don't have any draw engine online. So I think the play here might be to try to take out Nebush if we can. So if we forego Rhystic Study this turn and cast Aurelia's Fury, 4/8, we'd be getting very close, but maybe not enough. And that would be swinging everything out there. The Crackback would be getting all the creatures in, so maybe that's a little bit of a risky play. We'll have to think this through for a second. No, I think we should be okay with the Aurelia's Fury play. So let's try this to begin with. Now let's try Aurelia's Fury. We'll target all of our opponent's creatures. We'll include our own as well. Their face. And then we're going to allocate as much as we can. So if we pay 2 mana there, we'll have 4 left over. So that will be 4. So that should be 5 there. Hopefully we've done the maths correctly on this. That triggers Kambal. We lose 2 life. They gain 2 life. Manaform Hellkite triggers. Or maybe that was actually... No, we got a 6/6. That's great. Oh no, I realized what I did wrong there. Oh, I shouldn't have targeted my own creatures because it tapped them down. Wow, what a mistake to make. Oh, that's what happens, guys. When you get a little too overconfident and a little cocky, this is exactly what happens. So we could have taken them out there if I hadn't made that super silly play. But God, it isn't magic if someone makes a major mistake, is it? So let's go to combat with our 1 flying hasty creature. Oh no, I've passed through combat. Yep, see, I've just completely whiffed it there. I'm sure our opponents are very, very happy to see that. Okay, so we lose that We lose that for the turn. At least their creatures are tapped down, but then again, so are ours. So if we end up losing this game... oh, yep. Yeah, this happens. They cast Mentor of the Meek again. That's why you gotta read your cards, guys. You gotta read your cards. And now they cast Suture Priest, so whenever another creature enters the battlefield under their control, they gain a life, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, they can have that player lose 1 life. That triggers their Mentor of the Meek, and they pay to draw a card. Looks like are we gonna be getting some big hits here? We certainly deserve it after that horrible misplay last turn. So yep, we're getting those noble boars that we gifted to them, straight to the face, and they leave the turn there. Nebuch starts by playing a land. And now they cast Portent. Look at the top 3 cards of target player's library, then put them back in any order. You may have that player shuffle and draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. That triggers Kambal. They'll lose life, so they're playing pretty risky there. And they're targeting themselves with Portent. So I think they're trying to find an answer here to get them out. It's going to be pretty tough though, because even if we don't kill them on the crackback, having Kambal out is pretty much going to very likely ensure they're going to die soon. And now they cast Gravedigger. They can return target creature card from their graveyard to their hand. Well, that has to go through. We can't stop that. We can certainly change the trigger of the creature, though, depending on what they're actually going for. So that triggers Suture Priest. I'm sure they're going to have them lose a life, which they do. And it looks like they're targeting their Burglar Rat. Look, I'm happy to let that go through. I don't think Deflecting Swat is worth wasting that on at the moment. Now they move to combat. Let's see if we get hit by the zombie. They may very well swing out. No, they don't. They just move to the end of the turn. Nebuch's Portent triggers, so they draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep, which is ours. And we draw a Negate for turn. Nothing but the counter magic, the interaction. I'm sure there's some players that would look at this hand and would be super, super pleased. Look, I can't complain. We're in a very good position, and we've got a Rhystic Study, which I think we have to start getting down now. So we'll go there for a blue. We'll cast Rhystic Study. That triggers Kambal. We lose life. That triggers Suture Priest. We're also going to lose life there. Well, I don't think there's anything else for it but to move to combat. And this time we're going to do it slowly and methodically. Make sure we don't have any misplays or mistriggers. So I'm going to send Maniform Hellkite and our Dragon Illusion token over towards Nebuch, which will hopefully take them out. And then I'm going to send Hinata over at the Kambal player. We've got protection in hand, so this should go through without a problem. And we're once again probably going to see Hinata's second ability kick in, where spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast for each target. So even with the 1 blue open mana there, even if they interact, it's very unlikely they're going to be able to interact again. And hopefully we can take this down to a 1v1 versus Kambal. So I'm not sure what's going on at the moment. It's been a few minutes since our opponents responded at all, so I'm not too sure if they're away from keyboard or we may be getting roped here and that. I'm not really too sure what's going on, but we'll wait and see. I'll give it another couple of minutes, and if not, we might just leave the game there. And it looks like we actually finally saw our opponent scoop there, so they might have just been away from keyboard there a little bit. So we'll go through with damage now, which will just be Hinata, which it resolves. That's the end of our combat there. And now let's just sit back on our counter magic, which we have to be careful of because we're going to be losing life every time we cast a spell. But I think at the moment, unless we draw into something good, we're really relying on Hinata here to close the game out with commander damage. And we just got to hope that our opponent doesn't draw too many good cards with Mentor of the Meek. So this is going to be a close game at the end. We lose our Dragon Illusion, but now it's El Mono. Orzhov versus Jeskai. So they start by casting an Ajani's Pridemate, so that's going to be a great beater if the game goes long enough. Hopefully not. That triggers our Rhystic Study. We'll see if they pay for it. It seems that they don't, so we get to draw a card here. Stormkiln Artist, that's good. That's actually quite a good beater for us when we start casting things as well. Doesn't grow probably quite as big as Ajani's Pridemate. And so they get a Mentor of the Meek trigger, and they get to draw a card. And Suture Priest also triggers, and they gain a life. So I know we could have mana drained that, but I really want to hold up that counter magic for threats that we know are going to swing the game against us. And now they cast a Basilica Screecher. It's got Flying and Extort. So that may be something we need to consider a little bit, just because there's the Extort ability, so every time they cast spells they can drain us out a little bit quicker. And it is a flyer as well, which is going to get in the way of Hinata being able to go through. So funnily enough, I think this might be the one that we actually have to counter here. So we'll give them the Spirit token. Their Mentor of the Meek triggers, so we'll see if they draw here. This is going to be a close game. All the moves we make are certainly helping them. Ajani triggers, gets another counter. Rhystic Study triggers, so we should be able to draw here. Yes, we will draw. We get a land. And so now let's mana drain that. Triggers Maniform Hellkite, also triggers Kambal. That will once again trigger their Ajani's Pridemate. Getting huge very quickly. We're down to 12 life. Let's see what they swing in here with. They might swing out with a lot of things just to try to get more damage through, or they may play it safe. It looks like they pass through combat, so they're not ready to swing out just yet. We lose our dragon token. Okay, it comes to this big top deck. Magma Opus. That is not a bad one at all. So we get the mana drain trigger to be able to add 2 colorless mana at the beginning of our main phase. We'll start by playing Spectator Seed-In. It unfortunately enters the battlefield tapped because we no longer have 2 or more opponents. So we'll use the 2 colorless, the red and white here, and we'll get down our Stormkiln Artist. We're going to lose a life from that. And so from here we're just going to move to combat, get Hinata in for some damage, and then we're just going to pass the turn holding up Magma Opus, so that can make us another body, tap down the big Ajani's Pridemate, and draw us some extra cards to hopefully find an answer to what they're doing. This is going to be a very close game either way. So now they cast a Tithe Drinker, 2-1 with Lifelink and Extort. So we can definitely see that their theme is leaning very heavily on Extort, which is pretty cool. So Rhystic Study triggers, let's see if they pay. We hope they don't. They don't, so we get to draw another card. A land, unfortunately. We will let that through. That triggers Mentor of the Meek and Suture Priest. They draw, and Ajani's Pridemate gets another counter. So it looks like they're moving to combat. I think we shoot off our Magma Opus here. So let's make sure we do the proper targets this time. We're going to allocate 4 damage. We'll go 1 to the Suture Priest, 1 to the Extort creature. We'll go 2 to the Mentor of the Meek. We'll tap 2 target permanents. We can do Ajani's Pridemate for sure. And then we'll also tap down one of the boar tokens here. I think is better. We'll tap down here. We'll go a red. And let's cast our Magma Opus. So that will trigger our Stormkiln Artist and Maniform Hellkite. So that's also going to give us a blocker until end of turn. So let's make our dragon. We'll get our 3/3 hasty one down. Suture Priest triggers. We lose a life yet again. Stormkiln Artist triggers. Let's make a treasure token. We can always do with more mana. Kambal triggers. Ajani's Pridemate gets another counter. And that all goes through, so the board's looking a lot better for us now. And now they cast Drana's Emissary. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Which in almost every other circumstance we wouldn't be worried about, but we are getting very, very low here. So they won't be able to play for Rhystic Study. So we'll definitely draw, thank you. Another land. Now we lose that token at the end of turn. And we move to our turn. And we have Call the Coppercoats. Not bad at all to draw in this situation, but I don't think we really need it at the moment. So to start, we're going to play a land. We're not going to play Mana Confluence because life is getting very low here. Life is a resource, but we're damn low on it at the moment. So I think all we're going to do here is we're going to put our Meteor Blast to very good use. I'm going to choose X creatures, Kambal, the Boar token, Ajani's Pridemate just because, the Spirit token, and Drana's Emissary. We'll pay 3 red. And for 3 mana, we're going to wipe nearly all of their board. That will trigger Stormkiln Artist and Maniform Hellkite. Also Kambal, so we're going to lose more life. Ajani gets a bit bigger. We make a 3/3. We get a treasure token. Alright, let's move to combat. We'll send our commander, our Dragon Illusion token. We'll actually keep Maniform Hellkite back just as a flyer. And we'll send our Illusion token in, but at this point it's going to be Hinata that's going to close the game out for us. And we pass the turn here. I think we might have it, guys. I think this might be it. I can't imagine what they're going to have that's going to get them out of this situation, especially seeing as we've got Fierce Guardianship, Negate, and Deflecting Swat in hand as protection. They got our life total really, really low, but just that little bit off. Just that little bit off being able to get us. Okay, so they start with a Pristine Talisman. Unfortunately, that's not going to do too much for them at the moment. They don't pay Rhystic Study, so we get to draw again. A Distorting Wake. Our 3 mana Cyclonic Rift in hand. They move to combat. They actually pass through combat. So I think they know that the writing's on the wall here. But again, like last time, you don't want to be cocky and assume too much, because you're going to feel like a big idiot when you make a misplay. So we'll start by playing another island. Just to be safe here, we'll cast the Distorting Wake. That will bounce back their 2 mana rocks and the Ajani's Pridemate. And we'll tap for the 3 blue. And this should just about do it for us. Maniform Hellkite and Stormkiln Artist trigger. We make a 3/3. We make a treasure token. They cast a Mortify, targeting Hinata, so that was probably their last strand of hope to be able to give them a little bit more time. But unfortunately, we've been drawing quite a few cards with Rhystic Study. So we'll close it out with a Deflect in SWAT, which will trigger again. Manaform Hellkite, Stormkiln Artist. We'll use that to destroy the Ajani's Pridemate. Rhystic Study triggers. And our opponent is called GG there. So we're just going to move to combat. We're not going to mess around. And that is the game, guys. Well, I have quite a lot to say about it, but to be honest, I'm going to save it for the wrap-up. So let's go there now and discuss the game. So there were a number of factors that helped us take the win there. Kambal and Nebush did miss some land drops, which limited the amount of resources they had access to, and the Volcanic Offering set back Kambal and the Scarab God just long enough for us to get ahead. The Scarab God was getting some strong card advantage engines in place early, but unfortunately they flew too close to the sun early, which caused the rest of us to target them just enough to force a concession. Nebush did start to get some pieces moving, but unfortunately it wasn't enough by the time we started interacting with them. And while the Kambal player certainly did get our life total down to single digits, by the time it really mattered, we just had too much interaction for them. But overall, that game pretty much went how we hoped it would. We were able to cast Hinata, have enough protection for her at all times, and then keep the board under control until we were able to close out the game. Oh, and as for the Aurelia's Fury incident, we never speak of that again. But that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's game and saw all the exciting possibilities that this commander provides. Until next time.